Hello, everybody. Welcome to Workspace TV. We have another amazing special guest for you here today. I would like to introduce you to my friend, Kevin Davis. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for coming today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Listen, let me tell you, before we jump in, I have got to tell you guys a few things about Kevin, who is a proud native Detroiter. Woo woo. Detroit love is in the house.
Always.
Kevin has over 20 years of graphic design experience and over 50 years of marketing and branding experience in the higher education and nonprofit sectors, including roles with City of Chicago, Love City Year, period, North Park University, and the University of Illinois at Chicago. He currently serves as the Director of Marketing and Communications for Erie Family Health Centers, which is a $70 million nonprofit community healthcare organization with over 80,000 patients and 700 employees. He oversees all marketing and community engagement activities of the organization. And I just wanted to have Kevin on. We want to talk about leadership today. I always see your posts. I always see the things you share, and we kind of go back and forth online. And I was like, I want to have Kevin on. We need to talk about this leadership thing because I think so many people, there are a lot of people in leadership that were never trained, right?
Yeah.
That didn't really, you did a good job at work and they were like, okay, cool, you're next, you're up. And you always wanted it. That's what you wanted, but nobody showed you really how to do it. And then there are some people who are looking for it, want those leadership roles, but aren't sure how to navigate. So we're gonna kind of hit the gamut here today, and I'm gonna ask a few questions. And Kevin, you could jump in with any tips and things that we don't, just jump on in. We're just gonna have a nice, cool convo here. So, first one, what do you think are the top 3 mistakes leaders make, and what are some ways that you have maybe help people overcome them or think they should overcome them?
I would say not giving people room to make mistakes, being afraid to manage up and push back. Mm-hmm. And I would say also thinking that they have to know it all. And some ways to overcome some of those obstacles or those mistakes are, number one, we start talking about allowing people room to make mistakes is create an environment where they feel comfortable in making a mistake, so you're not chastising them. They also understand that
for every little thing.
Yeah, every little thing.
Yeah.
And also just showing people you have investment in their career and saying, I'm talking to you because I feel like there's an opportunity to make this a little bit better, or there may be a different approach for it. Also, giving them an opportunity to grow and trying different projects and saying, I know this is a little bit outside of your scope of work. I'm not expecting perfection, but I'm pretty sure you can achieve this goal. So allowing that room to show what your skill set looks like, but also not chastising people. And that just comes from just getting, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to give constructive feedback and coaching. And the other piece that I mentioned was just around managing up. And that doesn't come from a place of thinking, your leader's job better than them. It's they are aware of what's going on at their particular level within the organization. And this is your opportunity to say, hey, I know there was this decision or this thought, but based on the landscape at our particular level, these things are impacting our direction or our strategy, or also these are barriers to preventing my team from being able to complete their jobs and things like that.
You said something, managing up is very important because number one, no matter what level you are at, even if you're the VP, your job is to make the CEO look good. Yeah. So sometimes people don't know how to manage up. So your leader, just like kind of what you're talking about, your leader may come to you and they may have a specific direction. If you have inside information that they're not aware of and that is important to their decision making, you need to not be scared to let them know.
Absolutely.
That is managing up. People don't know what managing up really is.
Right. And, I would say the first step into being comfortable in being able to manage up is building a solid rapport with your
Mm-hmm.
leader, having those one-off conversations and saying, can I speak candidly about this?
There you go.
And you'll be surprised. They'll say, you know what, I value your opinion, or I definitely want to hear what's going on, because to your point, our job is to make their job easier, to not make them look bad. And if there's something that we can provide some insight, they may advocate on our behalf to say, you know what, I know for the marketing team, we were looking at trying to get this website done before the end of the calendar year, but there are some other IT issues that need to be resolved. So now, instead of everyone looking at me to develop the site, we can now have a conversation around some of the other barriers. So I can't highlight that enough, building that rapport with your boss. I know we often try to keep those barriers up, but you have to build rapport with your boss. It makes difficult conversations easier, and they don't see you as a threat or as a challenge because you brought something up to them in a candid way or provided.
And they'll trust you.
Exactly.
They'll trust you, and they'll know that they can come to you for the real deal, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest issues that I've seen, I know that I hate when this happens to me. And as a leader, I did my best not to be this person. And that is the micromanager. So how can leaders out there, and I know there's some folks out there who are watching or listening, and they may be a micromanager and don't know it. So first, let's talk about what that is, and then how not to be a micromanager.
That's a good one. I would say if you spend all of your time telling someone how to do their job or how to deliver an outcome, you're starting to micromanage. And we start getting into checking every day. Where are we? And that's a pet peeve of mine. If I say I'm going to give you this answer on Thursday and it's Tuesday, unless it's something that's super complex where it's like, hey, Kev, I know we're meeting on Thursday, but is everything good? Because I know there are a number of complexities here. But as a leader, you have to remember that this person is in position for a reason.
Yes.
And you have to trust them. And so you have to let people do their job until there's a reason you feel that I need to step in and say something. But even then, that's coaching. And that's not micromanaging.
There it is.
And part of that is setting very clear expectations. Hey, Kevin, we need this project completed by this date, or even saying, what's a realistic time frame to get this done? We can get this done by November. As the leader, I'm thinking, okay, that's cool. Or if because I'm a leader, I have additional level of insight knowing this project needs to be completed in October, then I can push back. Okay, what prevents us from getting this done in October? If we do, are you good to go? And just push off. So I think the other piece is people have to remember how they felt when they were micromanaged. How did you feel as a child? How did you feel when someone was just over your back asking you all these different questions? It's like,
all the time. Yep, that's right.
But one more thing I'll add on that is if you're micromanaging me, that means something else is not getting done in your line of work.
Okay.
So you don't have, as a leader, your job is to be air traffic control, to set high strategy and make sure all the planes are leaving and lining up, not in the weeds with the baggage cart and all these different pieces, because that means you're missing something across the board.
Like, how are you getting your work done? That was always my thing. Like, I got this. You hired me to do this. I have this under control. That's why you do status reports. That's why you give updates. And the worst, here's the other thing. You mentioned something that was very clear. And I had one of my leaders tell me this, that if you try to micromanage, you will fail. You will fail as a leader because what you just said, Kevin, they can't do their job.
Yep.
So you have your own deliverables as a leader from your leader.
Absolutely.
That's what you have to focus on. If you're trying to do the work of your staff and your work, you will be burnt out working 20 million hours. Your staff will not have morale because they won't believe that you believe in them. So that's certainly an excellent.
You're not growing. Also, you're not growing in your role, and you're definitely not building up your bench. A leader is supposed to build up a bench. I don't want to stay in my role forever.
Exactly.
So how can I build up the next leader to take my spot so I can avail myself and say, hey, talking to my boss, I do have some other goals within the organization. I've already been lining up so-and-so. They're pretty familiar with these things. So, let's put together a development plan. And if you're micromanaging, you're not you're just not available for those opportunities. And your team
Exactly.
will leave. Your team will leave.
Yes, because you will get on their nerves.
Absolutely.
Because like you said, they're not growing.
Mm-hmm.
And what, to that end, as a person in leadership, and we're talking any kind, so maybe you're a supervisor, maybe you're a team lead, maybe you're a manager, maybe you're a director, how can they structure their day? Because the more you go up, the more responsibilities there are. Therefore, you're in meetings. We used to say this all the time. I'm in meetings all day. What am I supposed to get my work done, right? So how can a leader structure their day so that they are actually getting some things done and able to meet the needs of their team? Because your team needs you. They're emailing you or IMing you or calling you all day. You know, you're jumping on Zooms with them to make sure they're clear on some things. If they, you know, I always had an open door policy, and most leaders do have an open door policy. A lot of times people do one-on-ones with their teams, but outside of those one-on-ones, they need to have access to you. So you can feel pulled in so many different directions on top of meeting your schedule. So what are some things that they can do to structure their day possibly?
So now that I'm working from home and have been for a number of months now, that's something that I've had to juggle with, and I haven't mastered it, but I can share what I feel has worked for me. And a part of that has been blocking my day. I would look at my calendar and say Fridays are my day where I don't schedule any meetings unless it's absolutely mission critical. I will block the last hour of my day so that I can go through emails and also set up my to-do list for the next day. I'll block some time in between larger meetings, because there are some times where, like if I have a one-on-one with my boss, it's pretty detailed because I manage a team, a very detailed team. So I need time before our one-on-one to complete a form that I've created to check in and go over some things. So I need that buffer time.
Yes.
Also to check in on last minute details. But one thing you mentioned is around the one-on-one piece. And I feel that that's very important, that at least for me, I feel every week I should have a one-on-one with my team, even if it's 30 minutes or block the hour. And even if it takes 30, that's fine. And that shows a commitment to them and your investment in their success. And what I will also say is try to find opportunities to not move your one-on-one times with your team as often as possible. I absolutely do not touch my one-on-one with my boss. If something comes up, I will not move that one-on-one because she's busy.
But tell me this, do you ever have to move it? So there's a big team meeting, right? That's weekly.
Yep.
And then you've got all these folks that you manage.
Yep.
Do you ever have to move it with your people?
I do. I have to sometimes, but I make it an absolute last move because I don't want them to feel that they aren't important enough as my other meetings. Or so what I will tell them is to say, hey, I have a meeting. Can we check in earlier? I'll make that first move to say, I have a meeting and they know if I change our meeting time, it's absolutely something that I could not.
It's important.
That's C-level, C-suite meeting that I couldn't, but I will still check in and say, hey, I know I have my meeting with so-and-so today, and we're not going to have our one-on-one, but let's touch base for 10 minutes or shoot me an email of some things we need to go over. Otherwise, we'll find some other time. So the other part of it is sometimes you're just going to have to get up early. Get up early and do your work. That's something that a boss of mine told me at a previous job. And I'm like, I'm here all day. I'm working. It's just me. And they were like, but the work still has to get done. I hear you, but the work has to get done. And can you tell me why you don't have enough hours in the day to get these things done? And so I was able to articulate why I could not get things done during the day. But at the end of the day, I had to start getting up much earlier. So sometimes I pop up in the office at 7 o'clock in the morning to get through emails. Like, you have to do what you have to do. It can't just be time. I don't have it because
the job has to get done.
Exactly.
And it's our role to make that happen. And it's up to us to work out our schedules so that does happen.
And I tell my team, if you find yourself in a situation where you have no time, I mandate professional development. It's not optional. It's a mandate monthly. What are you doing? If you don't have time to do that, why? And how can I free up your workload or remove whatever barriers? How can we delegate this work? And that's another thought that I was going to mention earlier and it kind of slipped, but scheduling your day, is there someone else on your team that can attend this other meeting so you can get some work done? And it may just be, I need you to just go and listen and tell me what took place in the meeting. So you're trusting them, you're showing them,
right,
I trust you to go, you have presence, and everybody else is saying, well, if you delegated for her to go, you know, or what's going on here? So it's a development opportunity, but it's really, I don't have time to attend all these meetings. So you go and update me during our one-on-one so I can have time to do the work.
I'm so glad you remembered that point, because it does, I didn't know this. Like, I would tag people to go to meetings for me. That was kind of like a thing. It was like a cool thing, like, oh, I have to go to a meeting for my boss.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I could send you to some more.
Yep.
But that's
an excellent point.
Yep.
It makes you feel good, makes you feel important. And especially when you're able to bring back what you heard and say, you know what, so-and-so brought this up, and I think that's a good point. Maybe we should do this. So you have some, you're not just the minute or note taker, you actually brought something and you saw some value in that particular conversation.
And that also helps, just because more stuff keeps coming out of this, it helps put your people in front of some other people and give them exposure. Because to your point about growing and setting your bench up, if you put your people in front of the teams, other leaders, and they show their capability in those meetings, you are further developing your bench, and they appreciate that.
So there's something that needs to happen before you get to coaching. That point. And that's putting your ego aside.
Boom.
And you know, I think about this, you know, my role is a pretty high visibility role in the org because it's marketing. Everything touches marketing, communications. I don't have an ego to where I need to be at all of these meetings or where I feel my voice always needs to be heard. I have my channels and ways to influence, up. So I'm not challenged by sending anybody from my team or sending an email and saying, hey, reach out to so-and-so. They can answer that better. Like, put them in the spotlight. I'm already here.
Yes.
Let them go ahead, and I want them to see the more beyond their role. So if you're the comms person or the digital strategy person, I want you to understand how the whole marketing and communications operation works. And that starts from jumping into these projects that are loosely related, but now you're in a project lead or project manager role. But that starts with setting the ego aside and saying, this is about your team, but it's also about your time.
That's right.
You need the time to do the work.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. There have been a lot of changes for all of us, right? You know, and it's not just in our current environment. If you think about the changes, I'm sure you've experienced at the various companies you've worked at. It almost seems like for where I've worked in the past, that every year there was a lot of change. There was something moving, something going, and your staff can kind of, you know, people were every announcement that came out, you know, they might be coming to you like, whoa, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? Like, you know, so what are some ways that leaders can just motivate people, motivate their team, maybe get ahead of some of the messaging when there's this constant change? Even if, because I've been in this space too, you know, sometimes stuff comes down the line and you're finding out at the same time as your team is finding out. Yeah. And you're kind of blown away trying to figure your life out. But you've got these people that are looking at you for some stability. So what are some ways that you can motivate your team when there's constant change?
Ooh, that is the $1 million question for, especially when you're in middle management. But what I will say is what I feel is very important is to not position yourself, your team, or anything as a us versus them. Yes. And I've seen leaders do that where they say, well, you know, they said, or leadership. And it's like, no, you're a leader. You are leadership. And true enough, you might not have been at the level where the conversation happened. But when it comes down, at the end of the day, as a leader, you're expected to champion and advocate for whatever decision comes through there. And I would say also the role of a leader in managing the team is providing as many updates as possible, trying to be as transparent as you can be, even, you know, uncertainty. So if there's a layoff situation, being able to talk to why, talking about performance. It could be the financials didn't line up, and so you can't talk to your team as like they're kids. They are adults, and
They are
deserve
adults.
as much context as possible, and saying, you know what, we had a very soft 2 to 3 quarters. It impacted our revenues, and we can't justify the staffing if we don't have the same demand over here. So showing them we aren't just making arbitrary decisions and cutting back staffing.
The why behind it all.
It's the why.
Yep.
It's the why. But even in the times where you're trying to be transparent, I think it's also important to show empathy.
Yes.
And understanding people's perspectives. And, I can understand this is a very challenging time for the team, or we all don't know where things may lead in the coming months, but I'm just asking you all to continue to, stay focused. I'll provide as many updates as possible. Keep them updated. And then also go back to your leader and say, hey, these are the things that I'm hearing from my team. It can stay in this room, but I need to be able to hear the context and then translate it to what my team needs to hear.
Yes.
But that's that trust piece of what we mentioned earlier about building that rapport with
the relationship,
and saying, you know what, I'm not going to go to the floor, and say this to the team, but okay, we're doing this because of that. Okay, now I have enough to be able to answer their
come up with
questions.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I love it. That's great advice.
Again, this is another way to coach your team. These are how decisions are made. And this is the type of context, information, or what the landscape looks like. So now they understand. They can speak articulately about change management or about tough decisions.
Exactly.
Aligning workflows, whatever jargon you want to put in there, it helps them understand why.
And again, like you said, when you explain it, you can't just tell people this is how it is. And I didn't know either. You've got to explain it to them, like you said, because they are adults and you're giving them that context, and that will calm them down. And you're giving them talking points, because they're going to be talking. Everybody's going to be buzzing. I am on the floor. Everybody's going to be talking. You have now given them a little relief that they can actually share. So, yep, I love that. Let's talk about leaders developing themselves. How should leaders, because you talked about professional development, but in terms of your team, how can leaders make sure that they are on top of their own professional development and sharpening their skills?
Years ago when I was at University of Illinois, Chicago, I had a boss who, he made professional development. He's the one who got me on that mandate of the work is going to be the work, but how are you going to be better? How are you going to leave this place better than you found it? And so I'm always on a plan. I always have something. My boss jokes about it, like, I'm sure you already have something. I do. But I feel like leaders should have something in the hopper at all times, some sort of, could be a professional certificate. I've been seeing a lot of universities are promoting those in lieu of graduate degrees. They're understanding budgets are tighter, tuition reimbursement is much tighter, and people are like, I have 6 months or 4 months and I want to learn something. So looking at some opportunities around, I would say people development and people communications. I think that's every leader, regardless of your work function or your discipline, should spend time really learning how to manage people, how to understand people, and how to communicate. I would say even spending some time inside your organization, spending a lot of time with if you have a talent and development team, figuring out how can you get into some of the programs that they offer, but also learning how to be a more global player within the organization. You can learn the business. So, I know sometimes opportunities don't present themselves externally, but you may have them inside through mentorship, or even just having someone you check in on or running ideas by. But really spending time on that organizational leadership and people management, I feel like is probably the place to spend your time. That's how you grow, and keeping in mind that what you knew last year is different. And everyone under you is still learning and they're growing. And so you can't get into that place of complacency where you feel I know it all. I do my job better. How can I motivate my team? And I feel like that's been my own personal goal. And when I've interviewed for roles, I tell them my goal is always to produce a quality product, quality marketing communications, but I want to start with developing a dope team internally that understands the culture, and it just oozes out in our work, which benefits
the organization.
And I'm like, oh, okay, because somebody did that to me, and I saw the value. This person wasn't in marketing communications, but he saw the value in pouring into me and making sure I learned about the organization, and I felt like I benefited from it. And so I advocate for other people to do the same. Just
absolutely
learn as much as you can about as much as you can, as often as you can.
Yeah. And don't you think sometimes we have to spend our own money?
Yeah, I can't think of too many times working in the nonprofit and higher education space. A lot of times there's no budget.
Right.
So, and I feel like I've had a greater sense of fulfillment because I've had to invest my own money in it. There's been a couple opportunities. Let me clear it up. A couple opportunities where employers have reached out and said, hey, we can sponsor this thing. You gotta put your own money in it. I think it makes you value it more. And your leadership will look at it and say, Kevin's putting his own time and money into this. And I put that in updates with my
yes.
This is what I'm working on personally. I'm doing my, like right now I'm going to start through the American Marketing Association. They have a professional certified marketer designation. I put all of that on there. Like, I'm working on this. I plan to have it done by December.
I love it.
My boss is like, wow.
Okay. You know. Yes. And I definitely have to have you back on, because we have to have that conversation about how the way you show up and present to them and show them that you're spending your own money, you're invested in your own career, you own your career, that raises your stock in a company. Absolutely. So that's what I was saying. Like, a lot of people, you know, they're waiting for the company to pay for their professional development. And some of us, I was blessed. I worked at companies that paid for a lot of things, trips and things for me to go and do. And then I spent some of my own money as well. But if that opportunity is not there, like you said, save up, come up with the conferences or now everything is virtual. So you're getting a lot of stuff free now. Yeah. So what a lot of people, and I heard this a lot, people want to go to work and go home or shut the computer off versus, I want to go start cooking dinner, and but they want to go start cooking dinner or seeing about their family or hanging out with their friends. And sometimes you have to do that networking. Number one, it does increase your stock as a leader, because when you're around other leaders, you're learning so much. Like, I remember I was at one event and I had a certain policy from my team, and I was just asking some other people, like, how do you do it? And they gave me some ideas where I was actually a little too strict. I'm like, okay, cool. If you guys are doing it that way and it's working, I can ease up the reins some. So you learn from people who are in the same roles as you or higher up.
Absolutely.
Doing things differently.
Well, something you just said as far as, once you get off work, and so you got to own your decision. And if you want to be that person that goes to work and works from 9 to 5, and this is all fine.
Yeah.
If you be that person that works from 9 and gets off at 5, shuts it all off, doesn't do anything extra, that's cool. But you have to understand that other people are also spending a little bit more time networking, getting up a little bit earlier to get some things done. They're investing in their careers. And like I said, that's fine if that's not what you want to do, but you can't expect to get the results if you don't put in the work.
You can't expect the money. Don't expect the promotion. And nobody's saying you got to work yourself to pieces. We believe in self-care. We believe in all that. But you're right. You've got to put in some extra time. Yep. So I think we kind of covered. I had a question about like a new leader. I'm going to ask it anyway, because I think we've given them some good nuggets, but I have two questions. So there are two leaders I want to cover. The 100% new leader, they just found out today they've been promoted. They're excited. They got more money and they think they know how to lead a team. But they don't really know. They don't know yet. So I want you to give me some advice for that person.
And this, man,
what should they do right away? Like the immediate thing.
Experience. I think the first thing they should do is go meet everybody that they may have worked with before already. Those that are in those leadership levels who are now their peers.
Yes.
Or in different divisions. And now you have a different perspective. You have a different level of investment. And as leaders, you now understand why other leaders made decisions they made, because you have this context.
Yes.
But what goes along with that is not inheriting other people's perceptions about those people. You always hear that when you start a new role, you're like, oh, stay away from Kevin because he's blah, 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 blah. And, I've been working long enough to know that might be your relationship with Kevin because I know how you are.
Yes.
But let me go talk to Kevin on my own and see, okay, he's actually a pretty cool person. I see why he acts this way because you never deliver on projects. He has to micromanage it. So you start to learn these types of things. So go around, meet as many people as possible. The other piece is realizing that you now have a new professional distance to maintain, especially if you've been promoted within an organization and now you're managing or you're more senior to folks who used to be on your team.
Yeah.
And so now you have to figure out this line, and it's not about allegiances and alliances. This is your career. They're not going to pay your bills.
Not at all.
So this means now I'm going to learn a lot of information at a higher level. I can't share that with my team.
That's right.
I also want to remain at a professional distance so that what I see them doing, I can't influence anything in an improper way now.
Exactly.
And some people feel like you stunting or you showing off.
Yeah, you're the boss now. You big time. Yeah.
But it's like I have a new role, have more responsibilities, and I have to maintain this distance. And also, you don't want to show any signs of alleged or perceived favoritism.
Yep.
In those roles. So that's huge. And the other piece is just shut up, walk around, talk to people. What do you want to learn? And realize they're not expecting you to come into this role with answers for everything. It's really a matter of remember what happened to you when a new manager came. They came and told you all things that were going to happen, versus saying, what are the things that matter most to you? Are there some things that we can improve? Can we, how can we improve this workflow? Or do you need more? Just go on that little listening tour and then go to your leader and say, this is what I've heard. This is what I've observed, and these are my thoughts.
Absolutely.
And out of, like a 90-day plan to achieve these goals. So now your leader's looking like, okay, you've listened, you have these things, and now your expertise is showing. Now let's partner together so we can achieve these goals. Now your boss can advocate up and say, Kevin came in, he's got a solid plan. Maybe he can present to this committee on these things. But the other piece is kind of chill out. Don't let it go to your head and you feel like you flossing or, you flex on everybody, because it will go away very quickly. And your team turns on you. It's a wrap.
They'll go over your head to your director or your VP. Yep. And they may have a different relationship with them. You might be new. It could be all kind of things. So I agree. Definitely just chill and see how things are going.
Yeah.
All right. So how about that person who has been in management for 5 to 7 years? What advice would you give them? And when I say management, I'm talking about middle manager, director level.
Yeah. I would say continue to look for new challenges and opportunities within the organization. I mean, that doesn't mean necessarily looking for a new role. There may be a committee you can jump on, such as like the DEI committee. It could be a mentoring opportunity. And I want to spend a second on the mentoring piece. And you have to go into it with the right spirit in mind and not look at this as I'm the parent of this younger or junior person. But in my experience, the mentoring is as much of a benefit to you as it is to them, because you're learning a whole new perspective. And so it should be a learning opportunity on both sides, but there needs to be some sort of outcome.
Yes.
So figure out like a structure of how this should go, what does success look like in a mentorship type situation. But then also, as we mentioned earlier, enroll in some professional development. The ways, the things that you learned, your experiences, your education that got you to this point, that's all old. And I think about what I learned back at Eastern Michigan back in 1997, and and then what I've had to unlearn and relearn and think about at a different level. Like a whole new industry was created from the time that I started college, which is social media.
Social media, yep.
Which became a luxury. Now it's a whole career. So I've had to sit in those chairs. I've had to learn all that. So looking at the different ways that your industry has grown, thinking about human resources, coaching has blown out of it. DEI has come out of it. Performance management. So it's no longer a generalist role. So how can you focus your experience into one of those workflows? So
absolutely.
Look at those certificate programs, or if you're a part of like American Marketing Association or NSBE, Black MBAs, they all have some educational component to keep leveling up, and then telling your boss, hey, this is what I'm doing.
Yes. I like what you're saying about the professional organizations. Like you and I are both part of several professional organizations. It is important to stay on top of your industry. So definitely, whether you are new or, even if you're an individual contributor, join those professional organizations. And I know a lot of people I've heard like, nothing really comes out of it, but that's not true. It's just like anything else. You can't just go to an event or join a virtual networking event and have your camera off and just be listening in. You get out of it what you put in.
Nothing is going to be handed to you. And thinking about my own personal experience and some of my friends, we are all heavy into our professional organizations, because you got to think about this way as well. If something happened to you in your role, what's your next move?
Exactly.
Obviously, you want to go, if you love your field, you want to stay in that field. You've built relationships. For me, I use a personal example. So for American Marketing Association, you've met people, you volunteered at events, you've chimed in at different engagements and spoke up. People see who you are. You have a community. So now you can say, my role has ended over at this particular organization. I'm looking for these opportunities. But then you also can learn from those organizations. They provide free training, networking. It's about access and opportunity. And one of my favorite quotes that I use, which keeps me motivated, is the worst time to look for your parachute is when you've been pushed out of a plane.
That's the truth.
And so if you look at the military, they spend hours upon hours learning how to pack their jump sack, their parachute, testing the tools. So when they jump, they don't care. They are prepared. And that's ready. The mentality that you have to have, is how can I position myself to be fireproof, recession-proof. I may fall a little bit, but I can get back up. So use those organizations, network. It looks good on your resume. It shows professional development, continued growth. But it goes back to, like we mentioned earlier, you got to get your mind right. If you don't want to put the time in, then it's not for you.
It's not. And
it's for the other people who are
going after it.
Absolutely.
But don't complain about the money. Don't complain about getting passed over for promotion, because you haven't kept those skill sets up.
Yeah.
So listen, this has been wonderful. You have got to come back. Definitely. We have got to continue this leadership conversation. Thank you so much. Listen, how can everybody get in, connect with you online or wherever you'd like them to?
They can go to the website, kevindavisbrand.com. Also the League of Leaders podcast, which is leagueofleaders.org. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Kevin Davis Brand.
Yes, love it, love it. Definitely check out the podcast, you guys. It is wonderful. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking with you today.
Absolutely. It's good to catch up. It's been years.
It is. It has been. Yes, yes. Thank you.